name. But more often than not, they didn't find out her names. What they did was yell at her because she wasn't tall enough to speak through the hole that was cut out of the plastic or glass. I'm actually the tallest woman ever in the history of my family. I'm 5'1". And so many times, my mom, my dad walked out from a helping organization, and my mom in tears, saying, I can't ask anymore. They act like it's coming out of their own damn pocket. And many times they did, because they were not poverty informed. See, I grew up believing that people didn't care. Poverty taught me that. I believed that the people who were making it didn't care about the people who weren't. I was 28 at University of Portland before I was ever around people who were making it. And I saw them doing very caring behaviors. They were donating time, volunteering, and I thought, wait a minute, this isn't congruent with what I have spent the last 28 years believing and experiencing. So I started talking to people about poverty, and two things became clear so quickly. Number one, they cared. They cared. I found out that my fellow human beings cared. Mother Teresa says to believe your fellow human beings do not care is more painful than hunger. So it was so fulfilling to learn that they actually did care. But I also found out at the very same time, they didn't have a clue. They could no more know my life in that war zone of generational poverty than I could know middle class norms. Because the segregation and isolation of poverty, we don't have meaningful interactions. Met my second husband's family 25 years ago, and Chuck grew up in a plumbing family, but his family owned the plumbing company. So that's a very different social class. If you're owners of the land, that's a very different social class. So I tell people, Chuck grew up National Geographic, I grew up National Enquirer. I have to teach him things all the time. He just doesn't know. Different knowledge base. So we go, his mom invites us to Thanksgiving. I want you to pretend that you're middle class. No matter what your social class background is, pretend that you're middle class. And I want you to show me, what would your face look like if you invited someone to Thanksgiving dinner and they showed up with 5 extra people? That's kind of the look I saw on my future mother-in-law's face. And I didn't know her. I'd only met her briefly. But I could feel there was this tension. I could feel it. You know, I was speaking to several thousand teachers at a teacher in service Title I thing last summer, and there was a speaker before me. And she said, I know some of you don't like working with these kids in poverty, but you have to find a way to put a smile on your face every single day. They deserve a smile, and even if you have to fake it. And it was my turn to speak. I said, I'd like to give you more information so that you actually like the kids. They will see right through you. That's a gift all humans have. How many of you have been in a conversation with someone? You're talking to them a few seconds and realize they don't really like you. Did they have to tell you? No, because that's a gift we all have. If you don't like me, I know it. You think my dad's a meth addict? I know that too, and you'll never communicate with me. Because if you're judging, you can't connect. And if you can't connect, you can't communicate. And if you can't communicate, how will we eradicate poverty? So how does a human suspend judgment? You got to get more information. You got to understand the whys behind the behavior. You got to understand the really true root causes. So I could feel the tension. The tension was building. We're in the car. We hadn't even got out of the car yet. And she finally broke the tension, and she said, it's okay, Donna. We'll make this work. I didn't know you were bringing extra people. And I'm thinking, I didn't know I had to ask. People don't have a place to go, you bring them. I was raised that way. You got extra beans, someone should be eating them. You like my shirt, you can have it. Stanford did a longitudinal study of people who live in the crisis of poverty that showed they're more likely to give than people who have. They're more likely to stop and help you, more likely to invite you. Those are wonderful characteristics. Although I did have a teacher in a training the other day shout out, but Dr. Beegle, how do you teach these poor kids to stop sharing? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And she says, well, we'll make it work, but I don't know if we have enough plates. And I thought I was being really kind and helpful when I said, oh, I know. Well, some people eat, we wash the plates, and then the next people eat. She looked at me like I landed from another planet. I later found out she meant she wasn't sure if she had enough matching plates. And then she said, well, are they going to spend the night? We drove a long way to get here. Oh, where will they sleep? On the floor. Well, what about bedding? Got any coats? Because what does she think they all need? A bed. When I walked in the house, I understood her reaction because there was perfectly set places for everybody to be at the table, and I'd never seen that before. We never had enough silverware plates. Can you see the class clashes? How often does that happen to you or people you know when they interact with people who live in the crisis of poverty? Because we don't teach about poverty. We don't teach it. We don't even have a clear definition of it. So what is poverty? What is it? How did we get to our current thinking? You know, in the 1700s, Pennsylvania made it illegal to be poor. They passed legislation saying that if you can't feed your family when you leave your home, you have to wear a P on your sleeve. Has to be 4 inches, must be red or blue. And they wrote notes saying, if we can just embarrass them enough, they will quit acting poor. Herbert Gans wrote a book called War on the Poor. He's one of my favorite people. He says, we keep asking people in crisis to act middle class. And when they don't, we punish them or shut them out. I know teachers and counselors who will lock up the food if a child is late to school. Raise your hand if you're on time when you're in crisis. Can we all agree that poverty is crisis? Is it just one thing hitting our families? No. The car's being towed, the lights are being shut off, the water's being shut off, someone's getting arrested. If something's going to knock you down multiple times a day, and then they walk into you, and how do we treat them? 10 minutes late, take your 3 buses back home. Our systems aren't set up to serve people in crisis, to meet them where they are, not where we want them to be. So poverty teaches you that there's no one to help. I said ain't every other word. I didn't know when to say gone or went. I didn't know how those people know when to say seen or saw. I didn't even know I wasn't speaking middle class sentence structure, but I knew my whole life people couldn't hear me. Because don't we equate IQ with the way people talk? Not with that's how everybody around them talks. I was 28 years old when I met Dr. Bob Fulford at the university, who had studied language and social class his entire career. And he said, I want to help you learn a second language. And I'm like, huh? He said, Donna, when middle class people speak, they use a very specific sentence structure. They use vocabulary that they've heard since the womb in dialogue by people who know what that word means. They talk about topics that are in their everyday environment. You can't know those things if you're not exposed to them. So let me help you gain the language that's going to serve you in education and the work world. You communicate beautifully. He never, ever said, you talk wrong. Ever. He was always adding value to my life. So I am now bilingual. I speak fluent middle-class language. And he did tell me, though, to beware that if you're tired, Donna, your grammar can revert. So I had an audience of several thousand, and I heard myself say, "Where, sir?" Where'd that come from? It's absolutely true. I revert right back if I'm tired, fatigued. So poverty, what is poverty? What stops us from addressing it? Because how many, would you raise your hand if you know we are a wealthy country? There's no scarcity. None. None, none, none. There's enough land. There's enough food. There's enough. Somebody in my audience the other day said, "Dr. Beegle, is there really enough land for everybody to have a place?" Look around. Look around. I had a developer in Austin, Texas, who told me every time he builds 4 houses, he has enough left over to build another one for free. We're not a land of scarcity. We're a land of plenty. And how many of you know we're spending money anyway? But you know what we spend it on? The symptoms of poverty. So we'll pay $65,000 for a child to go to foster care. But we won't help their family get a place to live. We have an epidemic of children who are being placed in foster care, not because of neglect, because of poverty. There was a family of 5 kids, dad and a mom, and they got evicted. They worked at a care center, and they couldn't get enough hours to pay their rent. They got evicted, and they moved into a storage shed. And the dad, creative, inventive guy, he built beds into the walls of the storage shed for his family. Instead of applauding him, child welfare, those kids had never been neglected. At a cost of about $65,000 a kid. That doesn't include the mental health trauma from being yanked away from your family. Who's good at math? What's 65,000 times 5? To say a lot. I mean, what might we have done if we were a poverty-informed community? What might we have done for that family? And saved taxpayer dollars, just like Utah's doing. The cost of poverty is more than investing in our people. My first baby, 1 pound, 9 ounce Joyce, I got a hospital bill for her. It had so many zeros, I didn't know what the number was. She only lived 9 hours. I had no money to pay that. How do you think it got paid? We're spending the money. So what if we just invest in our children and families and our seniors? The way we treat our seniors. We don't use their wisdom and talents. I feel so privileged if I get to be in the presence of a senior. I can't wait to talk to them, to learn from them, because they have so much to tell. But we don't typically hear that. So I have spent the last 26 years researching. I'm a research addict, working in communities all across this country to fight poverty, to get organizations to a place where we're fighting the poverty, not the people who live in it. So I want to share with you now a documentary. It's a PBS documentary, and it is being produced by a 5-time Emmy Award-winning producer named George Rivera out of New York. He really does have 5 Emmys on his mantle. I've seen him. He owns like 2 blocks in Manhattan of a studio. It's incredible. This documentary will be 1 hour long when it's finished, and the title is so appropriate. Its title is Invisible Nation. And I think when you see this very short preview, you'll understand why he has 5 Emmys. And my mom, Ruth. Can you back that up to the beginning? beginning? Thank you. I usually have control. I'm feeling really weird not having my phone. Thank you. This is my Uncle David. He's my mom's younger brother. And Larry, he's my oldest brother. And then Melvin and Rick. This is Wayne. This is Steve. And my mom, Ruth. My grandma was a cotton picker. She survived picking cotton. She worked in a laundromat doing the wringer washers, lost her fingers. My mom was born into a cotton picking family.
My mom and I would go out and pick cotton, and we'd make $30 a day picking cotton. It was enough as long as we had her check coming in from my dad's Social Security and a little bit of welfare.
She's amazing. I mean, she's managed to get 6 kids through some extreme crisis, trauma, hunger, homelessness, and here we all are.
All 6 of my kids, they are the most important thing in the world to me. All 6 of them learned how to clean house, how to do the dishes, whatever needed, mop the floor, whatever needed to be done, all 6 of them know how to do it.
And when we did have a place to live, it was always in the ghetto. It was always in this neighborhood where there were no sidewalks and the roads were, if there were roads, you know, the bumpy kind of thing where people won't bring their cars down who have nice cars, and where you're not really safe walking around. You're going to get beat up, or something's going to happen. All that becomes normal. I remember as a kid, it was just absolutely a normal thing to have somebody come and shut off our lights or our water. We go turn the water on. They've been here. No water. And you improvise and you make do. One of the things we don't talk about in this country is garbage service is an absolute luxury. If you're making choices between rent and food, where's garbage service on the priority list? We say, well, just because you're poor, you don't have to have garbage piled up. Where are you going to put it? My family would take it down to an apartment complex dumpster and try to put it in, get caught, get fined, and then my mom's Dunkin' Donut check or money my dad made driving the ice cream truck would go to pay the fines. And if you have garbage, you have rats. It wasn't very long ago at all. I remember a rat, this big, run across my chest in the middle of the night, hit the wall, bounced down. Normal. We survive mostly by picking fruit. My mom worked in the potatoes, she worked in the onions. If we were in Arizona, it was grapefruits and oranges. My mom cut grapes, my dad cut grapes, my dad unloaded watermelon trucks, he drove ice cream truck. The kids all worked. We all worked in the fields. And we lived in berry cabins, we lived in cars, we lived in the woods. We lived behind truck stops because my mom always said the truckers would make sure we were safe. I don't know what I am. Am I Dutch or am I Swedish or what am I? I don't know. There's no records. I don't have childhood photos. I don't know, what did I look like as a little girl growing up? I don't know. I'll never know, because in poverty, things get taken away from you. You learn not to care about anything, because caring is just painful. So you let it go. Your people become who you have. And even if they're not doing things you're proud of, or you really want them to be doing, they're yours. They're yours. So you can say, I can say anything about my 5 brothers. You better not, because they're mine. Steve is 44. He's got a lot of common sense, huge heart. He is considered to be mentally retarded by the state. He lives on $550 a month disability check, and he tries to supplement his income by going into Washington State and collecting bottles out of the dumpsters and then going back to Oregon and cashing them in for the deposit.
I've been arrested for bottles. I've been almost kicked out of the state of Washington over bottles. You know, and I told them, hey, this is not a bottle to me. This is a 5-cent bounty. You know, as long as it says Oregon bottles, they give you a nickel back.
My uncle David is my mom's younger brother. He's also disabled, can't read and write, but he lost his check because he had, according to the Social Security folks, he had an 18-year-old ticket in Arizona, and they stopped his disability check and said he needed to get that ticket taken care of. So the family members who were illiterate were trying to get a hold of Arizona and go through the bureaucracy to find the ticket, but Arizona was saying there's no traffic ticket. So he's been homeless, living in his van with his dog.
I've been in that van about 6 or 7 years now. It's cold and rough.
But you have no choice.
You got no choice.
You know, every woman that I knew, and by know I mean that I was close to, that I felt like I was like them, had gotten married very young and had babies. You know, middle-class people spend time with middle-class people. So the isolation of poverty, you don't meet people who are doing something different. I never heard the word college. No one I knew had a career. So it wasn't even part of my thoughts. I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to be a good mom. I'm going to play with them and sing to them, and we'll find a way to get by. That's all I knew. When I was 17, I had a 1-pound, 9-ounce little girl, and she lived only 9 hours. And when she died, I was just devastated because my dream in life was to be a mom. And Wayne didn't know what to say. But he walked to my house, picking flowers from everybody else's yard all the way there, beautiful flowers. And he walked in the door, and he had stolen a little card that said "World's Greatest Sister." He didn't have any money, like at the 7-Eleven counter, and he threw the card and the flowers down on the bed. And I mean, he's always been such a kind, caring human being, but life, you know, I don't condone stealing, but I understand it. My brother Wayne, he's my brother who I'm probably the most like. He spent most of his life in prison. He fights hard to survive, and started as a kid fighting for survival. He was hung when he was 14 by a group of kids. The only reason he didn't die is because my brother Melvin got him down. He got cancer as a kid, survived that. He'll tell the story of watching our dad one too many times come into the room and say to my mom, with a little bit of cash that he had made, should I give all this to the landlord or should I hold a little bit back for groceries? And he'll tell the story of watching Dad go outside and cry and deciding that the people in the big house, just 2 of them, didn't need all their stuff. And so began his life of crime.
I was too smart for my own good. I I saw all these things. I saw the way the world was. I saw Mom doing without food. I saw her not eat so that the kids could eat. For some reason, I was able to perceive that. I just decided that I was going to go take what was needed. And the next thing I knew, I found myself behind bars.
In poverty, life happens to you. You don't get to make life happen. You wait for the next crisis and you react. Invisible Nation will be on the air probably within the next year. They're fundraising for the final shoot. They've been shooting this documentary since 1996. So when you see the full hour, you'll see a whole lot of things, like a really bad perm from my cousin. I've shown this to thousands of people, attorneys, judges, doctors, lawyers, teachers, faith-based leaders, and I can't wait for it to come out. I really do believe it's going to help shift our paradigms to a place where we're separating the people from the poverty and actually addressing the real root poverty issues. If you go to my website, you all have a handout that has poverty competencies. A lot of people teach cultural competencies. I teach poverty competencies. So take a look at those. And then on the back are some of the other resources that my organization offers to groups to help them. I just finished a big partnership with the National St. Vincent de Paul Society, who are really working hard to go beyond just helping with food or clothing or a bed, and more toward, yes, we need that, and we need to build the kind of relationships that really help people to move out and stay out of that war zone of poverty. So if you think about what's possible, what you can do, I encourage you to become poverty informed, to take what you already know and build on that. Poverty issues are like race issues. It's not one class. You can't say I already did race, we're done with that. You can't say I already did poverty. It is ongoing learning. So hopefully you will read and learn from each other, but mostly listen to the people. They will tell you what the world looks and feels like. They will tell you what's in their way, and we have to be able to hear them in order to break the poverty barriers. Take a strengths-based approach. If you saw me at age 26 with a really bad perm from Wanda, about 40 pounds overweight, saying ain't every other word, homeless with my 2 kids, with a massive attitude and a big-time smart mouth, could you picture me here today? That's the strengths approach. It's believing in the unlimited potential of every human being that you come into contact with. You can't know what they might do, but if you don't believe in them, we know what they won't do. And then that NASA approach. NASA sends people to space and says, failure's not an option. How can it be in our own communities? Lastly, the partnerships. I've taught for 26 years that churches can't do it alone, social service can't do it alone, schools can't do it alone, health folks can't do it alone. It requires getting to know the people in our community and filling our resource backpack so that we move away from a I can't help you place to a if not me, then who? Here's what I can do. And if not me, then who? If there's something that I can't do that's in your way, you can go ahead and change that. I developed a model called the Opportunity Community Model. We're in 12 states now with this model. I'm just going to share this because we're out of time, this last 2 pieces. Part of the model is that we do a 6-hour program for people currently living in poverty. So it is designed to remove the shame of poverty that paralyzes people, to rebuild the hope for both people in poverty and people in the community who really don't believe that they can address poverty. It is to reduce the isolation by connecting people in our Navigator Neighbor programs. Navigators are people who get trained on poverty, so they're not judging, and neighbors are the people in poverty. Our navigators agree for a year to walk with people on their journey to move out and stay out of that war zone of poverty. And lastly, to connect people to resources and opportunities so that they actually can get the skills or education they need to earn a living wage. So one part of that day with the neighbors in poverty, I asked them, what would you do for a living if you could do anything? And then I go to their tables and I listen. In the morning is remove the shame, rebuild the hope. So by now people are sitting up taller. They know they're not the cause of poverty. I can change body posture in 90 minutes from that broken, shrunken spirit to really realizing, hey, I know some things, I'm not stupid. So I go around to their tables and I listen to them. And in this particular case, this woman said to me, I'm really loving this day, but Donna, I'm 70. It's too late for me. Every month I make a choice between my meds, copay, and my trailer space payment. And she said, and I got a knee I've got to get replaced, and she said, so it's too late for me. And I said, well, that's too much for one person to handle. I've met people in your community. I'm going to introduce you and make sure that you get connected to resources so you don't have to live like that. And I said, but will you tell me what you like to do? And she said, well, I crochet. And I said, you crochet? She said, yeah, I got 59 tablecloths made right now. I said, you got 59 tablecloths made? She said, yeah, I got a pineapple pattern, I got a grape pattern. You name a pattern, I probably got it. I said, can I use you for an example? She said, yeah. I said, what's your name? She said, Irma. So I stopped the conference. I had 100 navigators, people who were willing to give their phone numbers to their neighbors and call them up and say, how are you doing? And walk with them on that journey. And they were judges, they were lawyers, they were faith-based leaders, they were social service, all sectors, retirement community. And I had about 100 neighbors in poverty, and I had about 50 community volunteers that were helping to put that day on. And I said, I want you all to meet your neighbor, Irma. I said, I want you to know that Irma's got some health issues, and she's making choices between her trailer space payment and the copay on her meds. And she needs you to come and give her your contact information and help her get connected to some resources. But I also want you to know that Irma has 59 tablecloths made right now. She got pineapple pattern. I just repeated exactly what she said to me. And the room, I said, is there anyone in this room who has ideas how Irma could get those tablecloths out there so she didn't have to make these kind of choices? The room erupted. People were going over to her, did you know you could do this? Did you know? She's writing stuff down. And I went back up to get ready for the next part of the conference. And I saw this woman in the corner of my eye, not walking but prancing. And it was Irma. And I looked over at her and she said, Donna, would you like to know what else I can do? I do. I believe in the unlimited potential of our fellow human beings. Can you go to the slide of my two boys? The ripple effects when we address poverty. Don't stop with that person right in front of you. Understanding someone, a kind word, learning their name, helping them get connected when they're running into roadblocks. That ripples into their families. I now have 2 brothers who have bachelor's degrees, including Wayne, who spent most of his life in a cage. I have so many cousins who grew up living in cars with people who make X's who are entering graduate school. And most of my family members say things like, Donna did it? Huh, we can do that. Because they know I'm not perfect. And that's what you come to believe when you're in poverty. You can't do it because you're not perfect like the other people. These are my 2 sons, Dan and Austin. Dan's the older one. Now, Dan's dad dropped out of 7th grade and can't read and write. I dropped out of 9th grade. And not too long ago, Daniel was doing this. And I said, Daniel, what are you doing? He said, Mom, it's only about 14 years. I'll have a doctorate. Wow. And he has ADHD. Learning's really hard for him. But he's surrounded by people with doctorates who say, you can do this. This is how you're going to do it. People with ADHD get doctorates. People with autism get doctorates. How do they do that? Someone believes they can and helps build the supports in. Now, my younger son there, he just turned 18, and that's just my favorite picture. That's why it's up there. Austin just turned 18. And this kid applied and got accepted to college in Hong Kong without telling me. He's been gone 3 weeks now, and I'm just like, but I mean, the difference we can make in our communities is unlimited, unlimited. And I will close with my one and only poem. And I'm also going to be out there signing books. People for years said, do you have a book? Do you have a book? And I'd be like, I have pieces of a book. I have 3 books now. I have See Poverty, Be the Difference that people are doing book reads with. There's 9 activities you can do as an individual or as a group to increase poverty competencies. My newest book is Breaking Poverty Barriers to Equal Justice, and it comes with a training DVD that is being distributed to all pro bono attorneys by the American Bar Association, and others interested in social justice can get it on our website. And then we have a curriculum kit for educators who want to make a difference and change the statistic that kids in poverty are the least likely to get an education. My one and only poem is called Curious. I'm actually not the poet in my family, Wayne is, but I wrote this one. And I think it ties together everything I've shared with you today. I find myself more late with every crisis, more angry with every injustice, more greedy with every deprivation, more rude with every judgment, more disorganized with every eviction, more negative with every untreated illness, more unstable with every insecurity. I find myself more civil with every bite, more respectful with every kindness, more hopeful with every chance, more ready to learn when I'm safe, more motivated when there's actual hope, more happy when I'm wanted and valued. I find myself like the 43 million people living in the crisis of poverty, responding in very human ways to my environment. Thank you so much for the work you do every day to change lives. Thank you for having me.